Grace and peace be unto you, each and every one of you, from our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen. Anyone unwilling to work should not eat. Did you catch those this morning when they were at Thessalonians? They really caught my attention as I was going over the lessons for today. Certainly the gospel was right on when Jesus talking about taking care of us. But anyone unwilling to work should not eat. You know, in today's lessons, if you read all of them, and we just turn them again, they're terrifying predictions. They're talking about burning ovens, evildoers reduced to stubble, temples being destroyed, you know, nations rising against nation, earthquakes, persecutions, really scary stuff. And if we were to take them literally, we would be like a turtle, and we would be in the shell and never come out. Anyone unwilling to anyone willing to work should not eat. And you know what? We all like to eat. I don't think there's a person in here that doesn't like to eat. And when we eat, we say grace at meals. And grace is giving thanks for the forgiveness that I talked to the kids about. Here's a little story. A visiting pastor was attending a men's breakfast in an Ohio farming community. He asked one of the impressive older farmers in attendance to say grace that morning. And after all were seated, the farmer stood up and began and said, "Lord, I hate buttermilk." The pastor opened one eye and wondered to himself, okay, where's this going? The farmer then loudly proclaimed, "Lord, I hate lard." Now the pastor was getting worried. However, without missing a beat, the farmer prayed on. "And Lord, you know how I don't care too much for raw white flour." Just as the pastor was ready to stand up and stop everything, the farmer said, "But Lord, when you mix them all together and bake them, I do love fresh biscuits. So, Lord, when things come up we don't like, when life gets hard, and when we just don't understand what you're saying to us, maybe we just need to relax and wait till you're done mixing. And we'll probably be something even better than those biscuits." Amen. Anyone unwilling to work should not eat. Those are the words of the Apostle Paul as he wrote, and they're very familiar today. They really sound familiar. We just had a election. And if you listen to any of the things that were going on, there were lots of solutions, lots of rhetoric, and those words were tossed around about, concerning government spending and the responsibilities of being a good citizen of this country. And here we are in the season of Thanksgiving, soon to be Christmas, where we eat lots of great foods. And I started thinking about those who have little to eat, little to wear, little to share. And then I started thinking about where I was in late July. I went to Zion Lutheran in Worcester and was filling the pulpit there for Pastor Ann before she left. And I had the opportunity to preach both morning services, but then I also went back on Sunday night to share the gospel message of John 3:16 with the folks who come to the dinner that every week. And I want to commend you folks for doing that kind of service to them on a bi-monthly basis. That's awesome. It's awesome. What a blessing it was to be there. Those words, Lenin adopted Paul's words for Russian communism. "He who does not work, neither shall he eat." I didn't know that. But it dawned on me, so I started looking at some stuff. And so Paul sounds right at home in our 21st century political debate. If you don't eat, you don't work, right? Or if you don't work, you don't eat. That would solve that federal deficit problem, but unfortunately that's not what Paul meant. It's not what he means at all. He's not speaking to 20th century Russia. He's not speaking to 21st century America. But rather to a different community. A community that itself was under attack by the government at that time. Paul is writing to the church in Thessalonica. He visited only briefly with his friend Silas. They were missionaries. He went out and he made all these trips to different cities. And it was his practice. He preached his first sermon at the synagogue. After all, he was proclaiming that Jesus was the Messiah of the Jews. But there were those Jews that just didn't believe Paul. Some of the Greeks did, and the leading women did, but the Jews became jealous. Can you believe that? Somebody becoming jealous? So they gathered up a bunch of thugs and turned this frenzy mob against them, and they started searching for Paul and Silas. Now, I've seen mobs firsthand, and it can be very, very ugly, having been to several Klan rallies in the early 90s when I was working at the sheriff's office. It can be very ugly. Back to Paul and Silas. Not finding them, they attacked a guy by the name of Jason's home. Jason was a believer who had welcomed Paul and Silas into their home, into his home. It's interesting about the leaders of the mob. These men who have been turning the world upside down have come here also. That's what they're saying. Even though they recognized Paul and his followers were followers of Christ and had an extraordinary message that changed everything for them, they still tried to keep him silent. That night, Jason's house was attacked. Jason was arrested. Paul and Silas, though, were lucky enough and were sent off to Berea for their own safety. But no matter what happened, the church in Thessalonica took root, and with the help of courageous believers like Jason and his family, it's flourished, kept going. Caught between a rock and a hard place, the Christians then were persecuted within the city, though. And because of this persecution, they started talking about when Jesus is returning. They believed the return of Christ to rule and to reign, to bring judgment against the enemies, was going to happen soon. It was going to happen. They believed it so much, they started singing songs like the slaves did in early America, the spiritual songs. They believed a better day was coming, and they prayed for it to come soon. But what happened in the process, some were counting so heavily on the immediate return of Christ that they stopped living normal lives. They quit working. They drew their social circles tighter and tighter, that they almost became like what we call a cult today. And we're in danger of becoming that modern day cult. So much so that Paul wrote the second letter to the Thessalonians to outline the events that were surround the return of Christ. And he warns them, did you hear this in the reading? Keep away from the believers who are living in idleness. Keep away from the believers who are living in idleness. Paul isn't warning them about pagans or Jews or any other group. He's warning them about the church in Thessalonica. Fellow Christians who've gone too far in the anticipation of Christ coming. Found that interesting because Paul's command is to work quietly and earn your own living. Work quietly and earn your own living. But those words again, anyone unwilling to work should not eat, sound almost cruel to us today. We hear Paul speaking to us individually, but because we've individualized our Christian faith today. But back then, it really was a community. First century Christians were a community. They were not believers in isolation. They gathered together. And the key word is community. That's the key word. Christianity began with a band of 12 disciples. We know that. Followed Jesus. It grew to a point where over 500 saw at least one appearance of the risen Christ. Then exploded at Pentecost. A community of 3,000 persons. It flourished as daily as these new believers moved from house to house, eating, praying, singing, and worshiping together. Community cared for itself, especially the widows. They fed them, forerunners of what we know as deacons today. Were charged with managing the daily distribution of food for everyone. They had all their goods in common. They sold their property. They gave money to the community to help others. The beginning, growth, and establishment of Christianity was all centered about community. It centered around worshiping Jesus. When Paul hears the community at Thessalonica had stopped working and stood idly waiting for Jesus, the return of Christ, he writes to strengthen the community and get back on its mission. In this way. Paul tells those who have quit doing what he preached them to do to get back to work. His specific instructions was to work quietly so they could earn their own living and not be weary in doing what was right. In other words, a Christian life is lived in community, and community must continue to function until the heavens open up and Jesus sets foot again on the earth. What we are about is doing what's right in the face of any opposition, persecution, or discouragement. We're not just to fold our hands or quit our jobs and live off the kindness of others who are working and doing what is right. The question then was, is Jesus coming? But the question was and is, what do we do until he comes? Again, Paul's answer to the Thessalonians was to work quietly, earn a living, and don't get tired of doing good. You know, that's pretty good advice for our church today, everyone. While we might seek to understand the return of Christ, we cannot do like a gentleman by the name of Willie did. He lived in Irving, Texas a few years back. Willie was a member of a church, and Willie quit his job. He worked at NASA, a great paying job. Quit! Because he believed Christ was coming back on a specific day. He wrote some books about the return of Christ. He expected others to support him by buying those books. When Jesus didn't come back on the day he predicted, Willie's only response was somehow he had missed the date, but he knew he was mostly right. Our mission together is the same as it was with the first century apostles. It's the same that which Jesus taught us to pray in a prayer that we're going to be praying later on in this service. Our mission is God's will be done on earth as it is already done in heaven. Which means until the last moment, until our last breath, we are to work quietly, do good faithfully, until God's will is done here on God's creation, just as being done in God's presence. And we do that as a community gathered around Jesus Christ. Amen.